Hey Tea-Heads, I'm Don from Mayleaf. This is the second episode in our series showcasing the ways that the incredible yet unassuming drink of tea can radically improve your life. In the first episode, we covered the ability of tea to easily bring you into a meditative state. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link in the description below. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a related subject, but one which I think deserves its own spotlight. Tea's ability to foster an acceptance of impermanence. You see, change is the only constant in life, and while some changes are sought after with enthusiasm, most changes are approached with trepidation, fear, and dread. In fact, I would go as far as to say that all fears stem from a resistance to change. The ultimate change, of course, is represented by our mortality. The fact that our lives and those of everyone around us will eventually end is the root of all of our fear of change, in my view. This then becomes symbolized in the passing of time and in the aging of ourselves and those around us. We're also fearful of change of things within our lifetime, the change of emotions in our relationships, the changes in our home or our work lives, even the changes within ourselves. And while this fear of change may feel natural and inevitable and occasionally helpful in giving us pause for consideration and planning, I think that it is also important that for our own happiness, that we shine a bright spotlight on the damage that this inability to embrace and accept impermanence has on our lives. As very young children, most of us have very little awareness of loss. The concept of mortality is fuzzy, and we do not hear that ticking of time as loudly. We laugh with abandon because we have no anxiety about the passing of time and change. But as we get older, we become more attached materially and emotionally to our environment, and we begin to witness the creation of our own past as the ticking of our life clock becomes a little louder. We begin to equate the concept of change not only with the beginnings of something new, but also of the experience of loss, and this starts to manifest as fears. The weight of mortality starts to push heavier on our shoulders as we enter adulthood, and we may begin to start to question the meaning of anything if we're all going to disappear eventually anyway. Our resistance to change may start to grow stronger, and this desire to deny impermanence can deeply affect our lives, because as we try to capture, preserve, and fix things that we hold precious, we deny the nature of their existence. We try to achieve the impossible to prevent change, and this desire leads us down a rabbit hole of negative actions and despair. Let's take relationships as a prime example. Oh, delicious tea. All of our relationships, so fundamental to our feelings of connection, support, and happiness, will eventually end, either through mortality or through other aspects of changes within our collective lifetimes. The fear of losing a loved one can easily morph into a deep unease, which can damage those relationships. Fear of loss can lead to coping mechanisms such as distancing ourselves from those that we love, or obsessively checking on them, or reacting with fear and anxiety when we are in their company. All of this will not engender positive relationships, as they are not present or natural or enjoyable, and will not forge strong, happy memories, but instead may be looked back on with regrets. Similarly, we find it hard to accept changes in our relationships. We complain that our friendships or romantic relationships are not the same as they used to be, and we beat ourselves up and look for blame. Instead of accepting, adapting to, and celebrating those changes, we either try to force relationships back into old modes, which is impossible, or we give up and seek something new elsewhere, only to repeat the patterns again. All the while, we risk destroying the valuable and nurturing connections that we have already created, and we once again may look back with great regrets. Our fear of change may also manifest itself in a desire to possess others, control them, or change them, a recipe for some of the most damaging and disturbing relationships possible. And we can also use this fear of change to attach ourselves not just to people, but to physical possessions, as we associate material wealth and all of its trappings with a security against change. In this way, the anxiety towards change can drive us towards unsustainable ambitions, a poor work-life balance, and morally questionable actions, all justified by this deep-seated fear of impermanence. Let's have some more tea. The inability to accept impermanence can prevent us from being present. The fear of impermanence may instill a deep desire to capture and document everything. This can spiral into a removal from the present moment, as our attention is like corralled into capturing rather than experiencing. If you witness any beautiful scene these days, we can almost guarantee that most people will be staring at it through their mobile phone cameras, capturing, curating, sharing, everything except experiencing. The fear of loss and losing out can perversely take us away from the very thing that we're fearful of losing, that present moment, that present experience. As we gain knowledge and experience, we start to craft and create our identity and form tribes. This identity follows the same rules of change as everything else. They should always be in flux, always changeable. Yet oftentimes our fear of losing our identity causes us to become hardened and radicalized in order to preserve us from changing, preserve ourselves from changing. This can lead us to become manipulated to act in ways that we would never have done so before if we had allowed our identities and opinions to shift and change like all of nature. Now, I've just recounted a few ways that the fear of change can impact our lives negatively. There are, of course, many others, but let's turn our attention to the solutions and how tea can contribute to them. The acceptance of impermanence is the pathway to a happier life. It leads us to a resilience in tough times and the ability to deal with change with humility, grace, and positivity. It also allows us to truly enjoy our lives as we are more connected to the majesty of the present moment and less imprisoned and manipulated by our fears of the future. Being able to accept and even celebrate impermanence is truly one of the secrets to a fulfilled and content existence. But how can we go about fostering this approach to living? Well, of course, you can dive deep into the wealth of knowledge provided by philosophy, science, religion, and the arts. All of these areas of human understanding provide teachings in the subject of impermanence. But you can also drink tea. This simple act, this simple, enduring, timeless act of drinking tea. Everything in tea symbolizes impermanence. And by falling in love with tea, with true tea, of course, you have to become friends with impermanence. Newer tea heads often get frustrated with us at Mayleaf, asking us why this year's batch of their favorite tea is different to previous batches, or why we cannot source a tea which tastes exactly the same as before, or even why the same batch of tea in their cupboards does not taste the same as it used to. They want to fix an experience and make it consistent and predictable. Now, as those people start to truly understand tea, these desires for permanence soften because they begin to realize that one of the joys of tea is the fact that it will never taste the same. No 2 cups of tea will ever taste the same in your life. Now, this helps them to celebrate each session mindfully and with gratitude. But why can't the tea taste the same? Well, first of all, the leaves are all different. Now, there are so many variations in the making of tea. You can go check out previous videos. I'll put links in the description below. From the aspects of nature, such as the terroir, the weather, all of those natural aspects, to the actions taken by the producers, from picking to processing to roasting to aging, every batch of tea will be different from another. Even a single batch of tea will come from the pickings of hundreds of plants, maybe dozens at least, but possibly hundreds of plants. And so even within a batch, the tea will have variation. Even if you take the most extreme case of a single tea tree batch where the entire batch is made from just the pickings of a single tree, very expensive tea out there, even then there will be inevitable differences in flavor depending on where the leaves were growing on that tree. So every handful of leaves that you put in your pot will necessarily be unique. Tea is living and changing in your cupboards. It is reacting to its environment, the air, the humidity, the microbes on its surface. They all will change the tea over time in subtle or obvious ways. So even the same batch of tea tasted a few months apart will taste different simply from the passing of time. Now, let's add the complexity of the brewing process. With so many parameters all affecting each other, a shift in one parameter, such as water temperature or length of brew or leaf to water ratio, will cause all other parameters to have different effects on your final tea. The tea brewing process is a dance between all of these variables, which means it is a never-ending discipline to master. That's why we call it Gong Fu brewing. It also means that every steep of tea will be slightly different, producing a unique expression of those leaves. And what about you? Your experience of a tea will change from session to session. Of course, your preferences will change over the years, but even more intriguingly, your ability to taste will shift throughout the day. Now, many tea heads are often bemused by how a single tea can change flavor and effect depending on the session. And yet wine tasters have known for years that we all taste differently depending on the day. So it is not hyperbole to say that you will never taste the same cup of tea twice in your life. Every cup will be different. The leaves will be different. The brewing will be different, and you will be different. Everything is always in flux, just as it should be. The aesthetics of the Gong Fu tea session is a further symbolic representation of impermanence, which seeps into a tea lover's consciousness. As a leaf transforms from a dry and static state to a fully opened and hydrated leaf, it gives up its essence and eventually becomes spent, with the tea liquor returning closer to water. This witnessing of the arc of life of a tea from dry leaf to wet leaf during a session is a powerful symbolic show of impermanence. It means that in every session we are reminded to accept and to celebrate change, impermanence, and even mortality. Now, I know that for some people, this may seem like a stretch, that I'm over-dramatizing the simple act of having tea, but I can assure you that these little symbols filter their way into your consciousness in a subtle backdoor way. Over the 20-odd years that I have been involved in tea, I have witnessed these changes countless times. Tea is a powerful reminder of the beauty of impermanence. And to appreciate true tea, you must relinquish the desire to possess, to capture, and to preserve. Enjoying Gong Fu tea is a simple way of appreciating and adapting to flux and flow and change. As you experience this in your sessions, make sure that you're conscious of letting this lesson inform other areas of your life which may be causing you suffering. Let tea be your guide to accept and eventually celebrate impermanence for a more blissful existence, closer and more authentic relationships, a strength to ride through the waves of life with positivity and ease, and an inspiring influence for everyone around you. That's it, tea heads. Check out our other videos, taste our teas wherever you are in the world by browsing mayleaf.com, and come visit us if you're ever in London. Other than that, I'm Don from Mayleaf. Thank you for being a part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from those tea bags. Keep drinking the good stuff and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.